regulatory bodies cap tariff increases and tie them to inflation, ensuring affordability while requiring utilities to implement operational reforms before any adjustments are approved. In India, utilities are subject to strict oversight, with performance benchmarks that must be met before rate increases are even considered. Tariff requests are often denied until tangible reforms are achieved, protecting the public from bearing unnecessary costs. In Kenya, utilities work closely with government agencies to enforce efficiency and reduce operational costs. They prioritize renewable energy integration, which lowers production costs and enhances long-term sustainability. These examples show that it is entirely possible to prioritize consumer interests, enforce efficiency, and reduce financial burdens, even in economically strained contexts. South Africa's failure to transition. In contrast, Eskom continues to rely heavily on coal, an outdated and increasingly costly energy source. This dependency not only drives up operational costs, but also imposes significant environmental penalties. While other nations are investing in renewable energy to reduce costs and environmental harm, Eskom remains entrenched in practices that are neither financially sustainable nor environmentally responsible. South Africa has failed to adopt the consumer protection models seen in these countries. Instead of holding Eskom accountable and tying tariff increases to operational improvements, we are asked to accept skyrocketing costs without any assurances of reform for inefficiency. NERSA must condition future tariff approvals to align South Africa's energy regulation with global best practices. This means rejecting unjustified increases, forcing operational reforms, and prioritizing the public good over Eskom's inefficiencies. Recommendations to NERSA. Ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, let us focus on actionable steps that NERSA can take to protect South Africans from the devastating impacts of these proposed tariff increases. We firmly believe that Eskom's financial recovery cannot come at the expense of the public's welfare. We therefore asked, reject tariff increases. The first and most immediate step is for NERSA to reject the proposed tariff increases outright. Eskom has consistently failed to demonstrate measurable improvements in governance and operational efficiency. Before any increases are considered, Eskom must provide concrete evidence of internal reforms, cost-saving measures, and efforts to recover wasteful expenditure. Tariff hikes should not be approved while inefficiencies, corruption, and mismanagement persist. Mandate independent audits. NERSA must require independent third-party audits of Eskom's financial practices. These audits should uncover irregularities, eliminate wasteful expenditure, and ensure that public funds are used responsibly. Ratepayers deserve transparency and accountability, and only independent oversight can restore trust in Eskom's operations. Implement consumer protections. To safeguard vulnerable households, NERSA must introduce targeted subsidies, social tariffs, or capped rates. These mechanisms would ensure that low-income families are not disproportionately burdened by electricity costs. No one should have to choose between electricity and basic survival. It is NERSA's responsibility to prioritize equity and affordability in its decision-making process. Limit increases to inflation. NERSA should adopt a policy similar to those in other nations where tariff increases are limited to consumer price index-based caps. This approach ties electricity costs to inflation, ensuring affordability while allowing for reasonable cost recovery. It is a fair and balanced way to align tariff adjustments with the economic realities faced by South African households and businesses. Tie the tariff approvals to renewable investments. A critical part of addressing Eskom's financial and operational challenges lies in transitioning to renewable energy. This is not just an environmental imperative, it is an economic necessity that ensures long-term sustainability and affordability for South Africans. Eskom's reliable on coal is no longer viable. It is costly, environmentally damaging, and misaligned with global trends. Countries with similar challenges such as Brazil, India, and Kenya are proving that investments in renewable energy reduce costs, improve efficiency, and enhance sustainability. NERSA must condition future tariff increases on demonstrable progress in renewable energy adoption. This means Eskom should present clear, actionable plans to diversify its energy mix, prioritize solar, wind, and other renewable sources, show measurable investments in renewable infrastructure and technologies, commit to reducing reliance on coal, and transparent timelines and goals. By tying tariff approvals to progress in renewable energy, NERSA can drive Eskom to adopt sustainable practices that lower operational costs and provide long-term economic benefits. This transition will not only reduce Eskom's environmental impact, but also shield customers from the volatile costs associated with fossil fuels. Accountability and transparency. At the heart of this issue lies a critical need for accountability and transparency. Eskom's financial and operational mismanagement cannot be allowed to continue unchecked. Ladies and gentlemen, accountability and transparency are non-negotiables.
Please try to wrap up.
Almost done. It is imperative that NERSA enforces strict oversight to protect the public interest. Enforce compliance with Public Financial Management Act and the Constitution. Eskom is a state-owned entity, and as such, it is bound by the principles of the PMFA and the Constitution. The PFMA requires public entities to manage resources efficiently, avoid wasteful expenditure, and operational transparency. Similarly, Section 195 of the Constitution mandates that public administration promote accountability and the economical use of resources. Yet Eskom has repeatedly violated these principles, with billions lost to irregular and fruitless expenditure, procurement failures, and government lapses. These violations represent a betrayal of public trust. NERSA must step in and ensure that Eskom complies fully with its legal obligations before any further financial burdens are placed on ratepayers. Demanding transparent reporting. Transparency is the cornerstone of accountability. NERSA must require Eskom to provide detailed, publicly accessible financial reports that account for every cent of public money spent. These reports should include audited breakdown of operational costs, clear plans to eliminate inefficiencies, progress on debt recovery from municipalities and other outstanding liabilities. By demanding transparency, NERSA can rebuild public trust and ensure that Eskom's financial practices are open to scrutiny. This is not just about protecting ratepayers, it is about setting a higher standard of accountability for all state-owned enterprises. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the most critical points of this objection is the urgent need to protect ratepayers from being unfairly burdened.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. We've taken...
Ma'am, let me finish.
But summarize instead of reading the entire thing. You have to state your views.
It is all important information that I need to place on record.
You can share with NERSA.
Ratepayers
I'm giving you 1
not...
minute to wrap up.
With respect, ma'am, I initially prepared a 15-minute presentation because I was given 15 minutes.
20 minutes that you've taken, ma'am. You've taken 20 minutes already.
Okay, I will close. Respectfully, this is important information that needs to be placed on record. Ladies and gentlemen, as we conclude, let us reflect on the gravity of these proposed tariff increases. We find that the proposed tariff increases are unjustifiable, unconstitutional, and economically devastating. These tariff increases are not just bad policy, they are legal and constitutional failures. Eskom has violated its obligation to responsibly manage public resources, and the burden of this failure cannot and must not be shifted onto the shoulders of South African ratepayers. I want to make it clear, NERSA has no discretion in fulfilling its mandate. It is constitutionally and legislatively bound to protect the public. We believe that over the past decade, NERSA has failed in this duty, contributing to the dire energy crisis we face today. NERSA's sole purpose is to act in the public interest, ensuring fairness and preventing unjustified and unlawful tariff increases. Allowing Eskom to impose another round of excessive and unjustified hikes would be a gross dereliction of this duty. NERSA must reject these proposals, enforce accountability, and set a precedent for transparency and fairness. Rejecting these proposed increases is not just about addressing Eskom's current inefficiencies, it is about setting a critical precedent for accountability, transparency, and fairness in South Africa's energy sector. By taking a firm stand, NERSA can fulfill its obligation to protect millions of South Africans, restore public trust, and pave the way for a more sustainable financial equitable energy future. Electricity is not a luxury, it is a necessity. It powers our homes, drives our businesses, and sustains our community. The decision made here today will shape the future of our nation.
Thank you very much. We
Let
have
us
to
choose
stop
a
it
path
here.
of fairness, accountability,
We have
and
to
hope
stop it here, ma'am.
for all South Africans.
Walter.
Thank you.
Please, if you can assist. Walter, may you please come forward? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We are now moving to the next presenter. We've taken the presentation. It has taken 25 minutes. I've timed it. It has taken 25 minutes, just to put that on record. May you also just make sure that the mics are deactivated so that you can assist us in managing the process as well as the timelines. Thank you very much. We are going to take a presentation now from senior citizen pensioners. I've got the name of Catherine Loader.
Thank you. I hope I can see here.
Wait for it.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, ma'am. Good morning.
I would like to...
Okay. May you please raise your right hand? Thank you. Do you solemnly declare that the evidence you're going to give to this panel is the truth and the whole truth?
So help me God.
Thank you. May you please state your name?
My name is Catherine Loader. I'm a senior citizen resident on the Bluff in Durban. Thank you for organizing this presentation. I'm Kay Loader, a senior citizen who celebrates an 80th birthday next year. I have been retired for 20 years and as a widow survive on a pension, an ever-diminishing pension. How does NERSA expect pensioners to find the extra money for electricity? I, like so many elderly people and poor pensioners, find that what was once my dream home has become a nightmare, as we can no longer afford to pay the ever-increasing amount imposed by NERSA and other government departments and municipalities. We now have to sell our homes at a loss as property prices have dropped because of this ever-present downward spiraling because of economic situation and corruption. Unfortunately, white gogos are also having to support their children and grandchildren because of unemployment and the effects of BBE and shocking corruption and crime, not to mention load shedding, which destroyed many businesses. If NERSA was at all concerned, they would ensure that the amount of wasteful expenditure being used, because street lights stay on 24/7 as a result of wasteful expenditure, substations that are never repaired and maintenance is never done, and of course load shedding and criminality, the lack of maintenance. Sorry. and crime is a priority. Surely solar panels are also an option, eliminating cable theft by criminals. NERSA could also assist in recovering monies from corrupt senior government officials identified in the Commission. I trust that NERSA can thus appreciate the implications of the pressurizing the size of the tariff increase proposed. I and many senior citizens strongly oppose this price increase. I also feel that all senior politicians and government officials should not be exempt from paying, as all use the electricity. And if the poorest of the poor can pay, then so can they. And I would also like to say that these amounts should not be written off. They should be recovered from affluent business owners who have millions and yet do not pay their accounts. I strongly reject this proposed exorbitant increase and look towards you and ESCOM to sort it out and not impose this. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the representative of senior citizen pensioners. You've saved us 5 minutes. Thank you for your time. We now want to check if we have the person who's going to present on behalf of Zamimpilo Farming NPC, Becky Mdleche. Do we now have Becky Mdleche? Okay. If he's not here, I want to check if we now have the representative of South African Cane Growers Association. We still don't have. All right. We will now move on to NPO, the RCDO Community Development Organization. I've got the name of Andre Naidu. Good morning. May you please raise your right hand?
Yeah.
Do you solemnly declare that the evidence you're going to give to this panel is the truth and the whole truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. Please state your name and your designation at RCDO Community Development Organization.
Thank you. Good morning, all. My name is Andre Naidu, and the RCDO Community Development Organization is an NPO of which I am a member.
All right, thank you very much. You may start with your presentation.
Thank you. All right, so I just want to mention that I have been sent by various peoples to make sure that I am here. We were at the previous invitations, and unfortunately we missed it, or not missed it, but we were there and then venues were changed and so forth. This issue of the NERSA electricity tariff hike is a big thing for many people. So I want to mention the elephant in the room, or may I say the elephant that's not in the room. You can see the chairs are empty. Yesterday when I was here, there was quite a number of people, and there were people outside as well that wanted to voice their opinions. And so it worries me that our comrades, our people, are not here, and I wonder why. Perhaps it's because it's a Saturday and it's pulled up to the season. But I actually think it's because of fear, trepidation, anxiety, paralysis and other words that you could use, that people are not here today. They want to say something, but just, are we just powerless for what is coming? So I want to mention, before I get to this, and whatever I miss out here, somebody else will no doubt continue. I want to mention that how I feel. This is my opinion, and I know I'm putting it in record, and so I am a bit afraid to say what I'm going to say, that I've got bad news for you. I think that there's bad news for all of us, that this electricity tariff hike is going to go ahead. In my opinion, it's already decided, it's determined that the tariff hike will go ahead. Perhaps not in the percentages that are asked for, but it definitely will go ahead. And so all South Africans have to face the fact that there will be an increase. So, with the information that was covered yesterday, I did some deep thinking about this and wanted to find out, as an ordinary man in the street, somebody who's not learned in economics or academics, what is this thing that is called inflation? Because even one of the previous speakers mentioned that any increase should be related then to CPI or inflation. So what is this monster called inflation for people, ordinary people on the street, for people in our homes, our mothers, our grannies, people who are unlearned with regard to these big English words? So I Googled inflation, and as you can see, the inflation is, maybe I should just read it, from statistica.com, 29th of November. South Africa's inflation has been quite stable for the past few years, leveling off between 3.2 and 6.9%, and in fact is expected to stabilize at 4.5% in the future. I want to get to I don't know if you can see that. There's a bit of information here that from the top, they include, for example, expenses for groceries, clothes, rent, utilities which is electricity and others, but also recreational activities, raw materials, example, gas and oil, as well as federal fees and taxes. Some of these goods are more volatile than others. What happened in 2016? In 2016, South African inflation rate peaked at 6.3%. and gross domestic product, and thus future growth, took a hit, a sure indicator that something was affecting the country's economic scaffolding holding up the country and its economies. Low growth due to weak demand and an uncertain political future caused a crisis. Then President Jacob Zuma's alleged mismanagement and unstable reign, steeped in controversy and criminal charges, even caused the economy's outlook to be downgraded by a ratings agency. Zuma was relieved of his office in 2018. Ever since, inflation, number one, GDP and economic growth seems to have stabilized. Now that's the good news. I repeat that inflation, GDP, economic growth seems to have stabilized. So I wanted to find out, what does this word inflation mean? What does GDP and economic growth? And this is what I found out. And this is open to anybody who might want to have that little bit of education. Inflation, South Africa's annual inflation, according to Trade in Economics, the inflation rate fell for the fifth straight month in October of this year, hitting a near four-year low of 2.8%. So here it is. If you look down there where it says the housing and utilities, that these figures in South Africa, the most important categories in the consumer price index, which is related then to inflation, is housing, utilities, food and non-alcoholic beverages, transport and so forth. But that's the good news, that the inflation rate at the moment is 2.8%. What is the next one coming up? What is GDP? South Africa's economy grows in the second quarter. The South African economy strengthened by 0.4 in the second quarter. The finance, manufacturing, trade, and electricity, gas and water supply industries drove most of the economy's momentum on the production side. A little bit further, the information I got, other notable, where's it, 1.3? There we go. The country, buoyant economic activity in wholesale, retail, and tourist accommodation pushed the trade, catering, and accommodation industry higher by 1.2%. The country experienced no load shedding in the second quarter, which helped the electricity, gas, and water supply industry. It grew by 3.1%, driving increased electricity generation and water distribution, and so on and so forth. I'm going to explain why that becomes important to me personally. Household consumption was the largest contributor, and then the last thing that I had to research was economic growth. According to the National Treasury 2024 Budget Review, over the next 3 years, South Africa's economy is forecast to grow at an average of 1.6%, and so forth. So, to me, that's the good news, that our country is able to stabilize, that things are looking up, that inflation is down to 2.8%. Even if it was exorbitant, it would go to 3%, 4%, maybe even 6% in bad times. The growth percentages, there's obvious growth. So how is it possible, I ask, that a utility then comes and says, you know what, our inflation rate is dropped down to 2.8. But we're going to double the amount that you must pay us, that we want to increase the tariff by. Not only double, maybe triple, or maybe quadruple. In fact, what is being asked for, if you look at the figures, from 2.8%, which is the CPI index, and the ask of 36 point whatever it is, and even more, that's 12 times the amount of inflation. I don't get it. Why would a country that is actually progressing and showing growth, having such a reasonable inflation rate, how would one of its major industries, which is every single one of us needs electricity, how is it possible that we could be punished? How is it possible that we could have this big ask that we have to pay the provider of that service an additional 36 to 40%? And the figures, are we talking small numbers? Just look at the amounts that are involved. Somebody please help me explain this. The power utility wants price increases amounting to, can anybody read that number for me, please? Do we even understand what that number is? 445 billion, not million, because I can count a million. I know exactly how many zeros in a million. Can anybody explain to me how many zeros in a billion? Anybody, you can shout it out.
No.
How many zeros?
No, remember, say.
I'm making a point.
Just hold on. Hold on.
I'm not expecting a response.
Okay.
I'm not expecting anybody. Okay. I'm just making a point. That I don't. This is my presentation. You will have your chance. So with respect, ma'am, I'm making the point that I've got a strange feeling that out of the 20 that are here, no, 200, that very few of us understand this concept. Very few of us know how many zeros are in a billion. So very few of us know how many million is in a billion. So very few of us even know what this is about, because it's too big for us to comprehend. And there are people in the room that do comprehend this, and we hope that NERSA is taking this from people on the streets, on the ground, that are saying, listen, we don't understand this. We don't understand really how you can put so many zeros onto our account. And the way that you get to that trajectory of 445 billion is obviously by huge, unreasonable percentages of increase, if that is what the effort is going to be. In other words, this is the plan, that let's put on a burden that is just too much to bear, and maybe then we'll get to those figures of 445 billion for 2025, 495 billion, then 537 billion in the next few years, which will total 1,477. So 1,477 billion that we, the taxpayers, we, the consumers, we, the communities, have to be able to pay so that we keep the lights burning. This is my presentation. I'm not an academic. I'm not an economist, but I do realize that for the people that are not in the room today, they are not here because they're not interested. They are here. Those empty seats, I know every single one of them is filled with concerned citizens that just couldn't make it. They couldn't afford it. They couldn't get the taxi to get here. They can't afford the petrol to come here and voice what we're going to voice. So I implore each of you that's sitting here that speak up for your communities. Let's, the increase will happen. I know it will. The percentage we're going to haggle about. But maybe that's the point that we South Africans, we citizens have to stand up and say, listen, this is unfair. We cannot, let's think a new way. Let's think renewals. Let's think out of the box. Let's do things going forward with technology and so forth, but also looking back and protecting our future generations. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation. The next presenter, I just want to check again because the first presenter was supposed to be Zamimpilo Farming NPC, Bheki Mdletshe. If Bheki Mdletshe has arrived. Okay, still has not arrived, Bheki Mdletshe. We then move on to Richard Nicholson. Richard Nicholson still has not arrived. Okay, we are going to take the presentation from the members of the public. Phumelele Ncwane, Mdumseni Mnyandu, Philile Caba, Happy Kumet, do we have Happy Kumede? Philile Caba. Umjikelezo bedoni. Wathi ngokwabo utambona but akho zokuhlala. Into la nyuba yo. All right, let me check if Bosa has arrived. Bosa, thank you.
That's fine, yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Let's listen to it.
May you please raise your right hand, ma'am? Do you solemnly declare that the evidence you're going to provide is the truth and the whole truth?
Yes, I do.
Please state your name and your designation at BOSA.
My name is Rianne Paulson, and I am a candidate representing BOSA, who is Bold One South Africa.
Thank you very much. You may start with your presentation.
Thank you. Okay. Firstly, I'd just like to say good morning to the honourable members of this hearing. And as you've heard, my name is Rianne Paulson, and I am a candidate for Bold One South Africa. I will be representing my party this morning. This morning, I'd like to forward you reasons as to why the proposed electricity tariff increase is unjust and will leave an already vulnerable country more impoverished than it already is. So the proposed increase in electricity tariffs in South Africa, people, will be detrimental to the country's citizens for several critical reasons that you are going to hear that I have outlined this morning. And these reasons will be ranging from economic strain on households to exacerbating social inequalities. Whilst we do understand that there are understandable reasons for Eskom to raise tariffs, primarily to address the financial challenges of maintaining infrastructure and managing debts, we need to understand that the long-term consequences of such an increase will likely have far-reaching negative impacts on the economy and quality of life for the ordinary South Africans today. The first reason that I'd like to bring apart is the increased financial burden on households. South African people is already grappling with high levels of poverty, unemployment, and inequality. The cost of living has been rising steadily, and an electricity tariff hike would add significant pressure to the most vulnerable. For many, electricity accounts for a substantial portion of monthly expenses. According to the latest data from statistics, South Africa is a considerable proportion of household spend who spend over 10% of their income on energy. Therefore, increase in electricity tariffs will further sustain and further strain these budgets, forcing families every single day to choose between the basic needs that we have, like food, education, and health care for paying for power. For the lower income and middle class households, they will suffer more. The financial impact could be especially severe. Many already struggle to keep up with their electricity bills due to frequent load shedding and inconsistent service. Higher tariffs, people, will only deepen existing economic difficulties, but also make it harder for these households to achieve any form of economic mobility. The second reason I'd like to bring forward this morning is that hindering economic growth and job creation. A further tariff could stifle the economic growth of both small businesses and larger industries that are already burdened by high operating costs. South Africa's small and medium-sized enterprises, your SMEs, which are crucial for job creation, face steep challenges in managing overhead costs, including electricity itself. Therefore, increased tariffs would make it even more difficult for these businesses to remain competitive, potentially leading to closure and further job losses. For larger industries, the cost of electricity is a significant component of production costs. A higher tariff could increase the price of goods and services, leading to inflationary pressures. This would further reduce the purchasing power of consumers and hinder economic growth. The third reason, House, is exacerbating the energy crisis. Raising tariffs in a country where electricity supply is already unsustainable could worsen the public's dissatisfaction with Eskom. and the government. The burden and the increase of load shedding has already left many businesses and households frustrated, with power outages disrupting daily life and economic activity. While ESCOM, we do understand, has made efforts to improve supply, the reliability of the electricity grid remains a significant issue. An increase in tariffs without substantial improvements in service delivery would only fuel public anger and frustration. Higher tariffs, House, could also lead to greater energy poverty, where large segments of the electricity costs. This could result in even more people relying on unreliable, unhealthy energy sources like wood, coal, or worsening air quality and health outcomes in low communities. The proposed tariffs, House, would disproportionately affect poorer communities, as we know, rural areas and informal sectors where affordability is even more limited for electricity. In these areas, the marginal impact of price increases could be catastrophic. The poorest South Africans of our country will face the greatest difficulty in paying for essential services, even though they are often the ones who benefit the least from the national electricity grid. The tariff hike could also deepen existing inequalities in terms of access to energy. Wealthier households and businesses may invest in alternative energy solutions such as solar panels or generators, but what about the poor who are the least able to afford such alternatives? Would be left without no choice but to endure the rising costs of ESCOM electricity. So, rather than raising tariffs, House, South Africa could explore alternative solutions that address the root causes of the energy crisis. ESCOM's insufficiencies, corruption, and the aging power grid are central issues that need our urgent attention immediately. Instead of simply increasing prices, the government and ESCOM should focus on improving the utilities' operational efficiency by cutting down on waste, number one, addressing corruption, number two, and investing in renewable energy sources. A more diverse, energy mix with a focus, House, on your solar, wind, and other green technologies could provide long-term sustainable solutions that lower costs for consumers and provide more reliable energy. In conclusion, House, while the need for fiscal sustainability in ESCOM is undeniable, the proposed electricity tariff will ultimately have a negative impact on South African citizens. The financial struggles of households will increase and will hinder the economic growth of our country and deepen already the inequality and potentially worsen the energy crisis. Instead, House, of burdening the public with high prices, the government and ESCOM must explore alternatives that focus on efficiency, corruption reduction, and renewable energy solutions. South Africa as a whole, House, needs a holistic and equitable approach to energy policy, one that prioritizes stability and long-term and fairness to all South African citizens, especially and particularly to the most vulnerable citizens of South Africa. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Okay. I think there are no questions. I was looking at the members of the regulator. There are no questions for you. I think the message was clear. Okay. I would like now to again invite Philile Gaba. Philile, you said you are here. Ngicela ungathukwa please, usukume. Andre Naidu, may you please provide support as you indicated. Support the support Sisi lapha because she's a bit scared and you must be comfortable. Why are you scared of stating your views? And Nangu Eskom is in front of you. So tell Eskom what they must consider whilst the application is before us, but through us, you do that through us. Okay, may you please raise your right hand, Sisi? Do you solemnly declare that the evidence you're going to provide to this panel is the truth and the whole truth?
Yes, I do.
And ufakahle sukusaba please khulumela la.
Yes, I do.
Ungasibheki nosibheka ubheke la etop kuba bonke ungabheki la emehlweni yabo. Okay, please state your name and your and the community you're coming from. Ngicela usho igama lakho lapha ku record utsho nokuthi ubuya kweyiphi community.
Sanibonani. Igama lami kuphilile ngwakagcaba ngivela eWaterloo.
Yiphi community?
eWaterloo.
Okay.
Indawo, yeah.
All right.
Yebo. Ngicela ukukhuluma ngolimi lwami bandla. Ngicela ukukhuluma ngesizulu.
Khuluma ngesizulu uvumelekile ungakhumshi ungakhuluma isingisi khuluma ngelimi lakho ukhulume kathi ugcizelele lokho ufuna ukuthi sikuzwe nalokho ufuna uEskom akuzwe.
Yebo. Njengoba la kwaZulu Natal singabahlali bakhona asisebenzi sihleze emakhaya sifundile asiqashwe imisebenzi ayikho sihola siphila ngemali yabazali impesheni njengoba ugesi uhlala unyuka zonke izinsuku sigcina singasanayo imali ukuthi sithenge ukudla sesithola ukuthi sisebenzisa yona le sithenga ngayo ugesi okubuhlungu kakhulu ugesi njengoba ubiza nje izalikwazi zethu badla imithi le mithi bayifaka khona emafrijini kuyaphoqeleka ukuthi ngaso sonke isikhathi bahlale benawo ugesi ukuze amaphilisi abo angonakali ngoba amanye awo ahlala emafrijini okubuhlungu kakhulu nje ugesi lokhu unyuka njalo asiqashwa nathi asisebenzi ayikho imali esitholayo sizophila ngane esikhathini esizayo abantwana bethu njengamanje bayafunda nabo izinga lokuthi baqashwe futhi nalo alikho njengamanje esikhathini esizayo kuzophila kanjani mhlambe eminyakeni ewu20 ezayo kobe sekunje South Africa lokhu kuzonyuka ugesi imisebenzi ayikho abantu abaqashwa akukho lutho kwenzakala besicela mangabe uhulumeni wethu engake naye asilekelele kube nezinto aziprovide down njengethu ukuthi ziyenze ukuze zikwazi ukuthola amasenti azokwazi ukuthi baphile ngawo nogesi siyacela ukuthi usilekelele kunala kuqala kwilokhuzana kwiIndia babesebenzisa ilokhuzana babesebenzisa imfucuza yomoba uma ngabe lo mfucuza yayibizwa mangabe sebewufafathile amanzi lawo kashukela lo fucuza lo babeyithatha behambe bokwenza ngayo ugesi abasayisebenzisa naseBrazil leyo ukuthi ilekelele ukuthi ugesi kungasetshenziswa amalahla kusetshenziswe wona ukuthi bekwazi ukuthi ugesi baphile ukwazi ukuthi indleko zikagesi zingabi high nokuthi imvelo ivikeleke kakhulu ngiyabonga
Siyabonga kakhulu nomlayezo wakho usuzwile ungasabi ukukhuluma kahle ngelimi lakho lesizulu. Thank you very much. All right, thank you. I would like to then take the next presentation from the member of the public. I have the name of Duduz Hlongwa. Duduz. All right, good morning, Babuhlongo.
Yebo, sanibona.
Sawubona. Ngicela uphakamise isandla sakho sasokunene. Uyafunga ukuthi ufakazi ozabonikeza le panel namhlanje izabe iliqiniso neqiniso liphelele.
Yebo, ngiyafunga.
Ngicela utsho igama lakho kwakhona for the record nokuthi ubuya kumphakathi wakuphi.
Okay. Igama umduduzo kaHlongwa ngiqhamuka eSydenham. Ngusihlalo weMjondolo iLesi Road Informal Settlements.
Ungaqalisa ke ngepresentation yakho.
Sibonge. Ngiphinde ngibingelele umphakathi wonkana. Njengoba bese ngishilo igama umduduzo kaHlongwa ngimele ngiqhamuka eLesi Road Informal Settlements. Cishe siyazi sonke ukuthi la eSouth Africa izinga lenhlupheko izinga lemsebenzi engatholakali liphezulu kangakanani. Imindeni eminingi izisizwe impesheni yogogo kube imali yeqolo izona zinto eziye zibambe imindeni kube ngathi isimeme imile ngobani amazinga emsebenzi aphansi ngalendlela le and uhulumeni wethu awusinakekile ngathi nje awunandaba nathi yize siphethwe abantu abamnyama. Sisukile emakhaya eindaweni zasemakhaya la esizalelwe khona iningi lethu seza eindaweni zasemadolobheni ngoba sizozama impilo sizozama ukuthola amathuba emsebenzi kodwa lokho kuze kusilidele ekuthenini size sigcine silapha eindaweni zemjondolo njengoba nazi ukuthi la eSouth Africa nemjondolo kungathi iyakhula usuku nosuku ilezo izathu ezenza ukuthi size sibe la kuze kwenzeke leso simo leso. So lokho kwasenza kule yaminyaka edlule ukuthi silwe ukuthi nathi ake sifaniswe namanye amalungu omphakathi la eSouth Africa nathi sibe nogesi emjondolo ngoba government ugesi ubungavunyelwe emjondolo cishe siyakwazi lokho but ngokuyilwa lempilo yagcina sikwazile ukuthi sivunyelwe nathi ukuthi sithole ugesi sifakele emjondolo yethu. So ngalezi zathu sengibalile ekuqaleni ukuthi imindeni eminingi imiswe imali yeqolo imiswe impesheni yogogo leyo mali leyo uma uzobheka namazinga amanani okudla igross aphezulu. So uma ngabe phezulu kuze futhi na kwi transport ama tax ukusuka la ohlala khona uya eThekwini noma uya eTohweni makukhona itoho litholile imali enkulu egitshelwa ngayo. So lezo zinto lezo zize zigcine zisibambezela ukuthi nathi sikwazi ukuthi sithuthukise siqhubeke nempilo siye phambili. Manje nawo ke no Eskom uzosifuqa manje uzosiphushela ukuthi akunyuke intengo kagesi le mali le izobe isiqhamukapi phezulu kwalezi zinto esengiyibalulile ekuqaleni ngoba ugesi uyasiza njengoba sihlale emjondolo singakabi nogesi ibisha mihla namalanga emjondolo. So size sisukume silo ukuthi nathi asifakele phela ugesi ngoba vele sama South Africans nathi siyavota sinelungelo lakho konke okutholwa umhlali wala eSouth Africa size siutholeke lo gesi. But then manje ngendlela okwenzeka ngayo ngazuthi thina nje asinakiwe asinandaba noma kukhulunywa isikhathi esiningi thina asifakwa kulezo inkulumo lawo ma discussions lawo asuke ethinta nathi ezabahlali bala eMzansi isikhathi esiningi nje asifakwa thina asinakwa akuziwa kuthina kuzoziwa ukuthi thina ke iluphi uvo esinalo nathi ezabahlali bala. So uthola ukuthi umuntu ohlezi lapha emjondolo uma kwenzekile wathola lelo doho lelalitholile mhlambe uyi security uhola malini imost esengike ngahlangana nabo ngaxoxisana nabo uthola umuntu athi ngihola 2500 rand imalini leyo omunye athi ngihola 3.5 4.5 imalini leyo kusafanele kule mali le kube nemali ethile ayithumela emakhaya ngoba ushiye izingane emakhaya ushiye abazali emakhaya abasebenzi badala bonke babheke kuyena ukuthi awungoba usekunetoho olitholile sesokwazi nathi ukuthi sithi ukuthola okuncane from ingane yethu or indodakazi yethu kodwa manje kuthola ukuthi kuleyo madlana encane 3.5 cabanga wena ungaphila ngo3.5 mhlambe ngeke ukwazi ukuphila even usuku olulodwa kodwa bona laphana njengoba sihleze emjondolo kufanele ukwazi ukuthi ubheke emakhaya kufanele ukwazi futhi ukuthi ubhekelele nawe ke idingo zakho la uhlezi khona njengani ukwazi ukuthenga igrocer ukwazi ukubhekelela futhi uma uya etohweni lakho uyagibela kudingeka uthathe kuyona le mali le so uma umuntu ucabanga urizina awuyibheke lento le uEskom siyacela ukuthi uyibheke lento nawo uNERSA uma ucabanga awuke usifake nathi uyifake wona ezicathulweni zethu uyizwe lento ngangijabule ekuqaleni ngithi cishe inkampani eziningi even na government sesiphethwe abantu abamnyama ziranwa abantu abamnyama ama CEOs ama managers abantu abamnyama so ngaba nokuthi labantu laba bazosibhekelela nanoma becabanga bayalwazi usizo lwethu bayazi inhlupheko yethu kodwa uthola ukuthi ngendlela okwenzeka ngayo since kuqala nje like first elections angiboni lutho ngazi ukuthi labantu laba bayicabangela bona ukuthi bona imali engena kubona ingakanani and uthola ukuthi kwakuyona leyo mali leyo lemholo yabo bagcina bengayisebenzisanga ngani ngoba banama benefits abawatholayo from inkampani lezi ezinkulu abayisebenzelayo njengabo NERSA lapho nabo Eskom mangathatha nje iCEO iCFO kaEskom ukuthi ihola malini ungathuka lawo bantu lawo bayahlala kuma discussions panels bedecide ukuthi imali zinyuka kanjani nabo oNERSA lapho badecide ukuthi imali inyuka kanjani othothi yena la ihlezi khona konke umuzi ahlezi kuwona uprovidewe inkampani imoto ahamba ngayo unanama security konke kukhokhelwe inkampani noma ugovernment uma sebethatha inqomo kushuthi ababheka ukuthi okay vele umuntu ogqobekayo yilowa oswele vele kuye kuthiweni it's the survival of the fittest maybe iyona ndlela ke siphila ngayo iyona abafuna siqhubeke siphile ngayo yize sikuleni kululeke sithi sikuyona le kwayimina angiyiboni manje ngeke ngiqamba manje kuyashiwo nje ukuthi siphila ngaphansi kwenkululeko inkululeko yokuvota means nothing if ungenalutho esandleni if kungekho lutho olungenayo kuwena nawe kuzokwenza ukuthi usimame uye phambili sifundile sibuye emavasithi sisemjondolo iphi imisebenzi izophuma phi le mali leyo khokhelwa ke lo Eskom lo 36.1% is kumina is 40%. So lo 40% cabanga uma kuthiwa ekhaya usebenzisa ugesi ka 500 rand per month uma usu add ke lo 40% ngizobeka ngithi 40% okusho ukuthi sekuaddeka manje roughly 180 rand okusho ukuthi manje kulo 500 rand obukade ukagesi obukade usebenzisa ngenyanga sekufanele kube 680 rand it's 700 rand shothi usu add about 200 rand. So anibheke lento le lo 200 rand yabothi isaka lempuphu liyaphuma noma isaka le rice no isaka le rice nento ezincane kuyaphuma kulo 200 rand noma isaka lempuphu nezinye izinto futhi kuyaphuma kulo 200 rand kodwa manje nifuna still siyojikjela ngala kaEskom of which now lo Eskom uzube kule state okusona awenziwanga yithina izona izikhulu zawo ezithatha imali zayikhwabanisa yehla ngemlenze kodwa lokho sekuzobuya manje kuzoshawa thina ke ngoba phela thina akekho vele usinakile ngike ngasho ekuqaleni ukuthi thina isihlala ikakhulukazi emjondolo thina esiqhamuka emakhaya esihlala nasemakhaya asibhekiwe thina asinazwi we are voiceless because vele we are the have nots. So siyacela NERSA kuyinqomo eniyithathayo ake nibheke lento le nibheke nijule nirizine nani nibabantu nibe nobuntu nibheke lenhlupheko le esikuyona yes khona sinazi inkinga esinazo emjondolo esihlala kuyona iyasha yona kodwa kungcono kunalesa simo singenawo ugesi sisasebenzisa ikhandlela sisebenzisa isikeni mhlambe wena ungathola awukazi uyisebenzise kwaleyo sikeni kodwa ngoba umuntu omnyama ngiyabelieve ukuthi uyayifila lento engiyifilayo mina so siyacela ukuthi ake nicabangisise lento le eyinqumene enithathayo asingacindezelwa abantu bakithi abantu abalwaziyo usizo lwethu asingavumi ngiyacela asingavumi because lokho kuzolidela khona lento esanda kushiwo i-Human Rights Commission ithi kulesicelo sika Eskom sokuthi kunyuswe ama tariffs kugesi lento izolidela ingalidela kwi social unrest niyifuna lento yenzeke eMzansi uma nivuma ukuthi anyuke amanani kagesi okusho ukuthi nina nithi no aninandaba noma kungenzekani nibonile sike sadlula kulesimo lesi kwalutho kwenziwa yonke into nifuna sibuye siphindele lapho futhi nibonile imisebenzi ishayeke kanjani abantu bakithi baphelelwa amatoha bebekade bekuwona because of le social unrest kuluthwa kuvalwa izinkampani kwenzeka yonke into kuvalwe izitolo nifuna sibuyele lapho please reason okugcina ngihlanganise ngike ngakuveza ukuthi sifundile sibuye eMyPD6 and abanye bethu still baseseMyPD6 njengami ngisekhona eVarsity ngiqedela my masters for God's sake and ngihlanganise some aspiring academics like me ukuthi sibhale a paper esol submit ku president and hopefully lizofika nasezandleni zeNERSA nawo Eskom leli paper leli siveza indlela engasetshenziswa ugovernment ukuthi ugesi ungakhokhelwa ke kwanhlobo so siyacela nibheke lento nalo futhi leli paper ngamhla silipublisha ngiyacela ukuthi nalo nilifunde ningalithathi nilishove ngaphansi kwama shelves nilifunde and then reason like ake nibe yithina nani nifile umzima esikubona ngiyabonga
engcono awuba ngumsindo futhi ubeke kahle umyalezo wakho kakhulu sibulela ngesikhathi sakho mara ke thina sinawo ama security lokukhuluma ngawo nemali zezo leze increase lezo asinaso lezo asinama security asinaso konke lokho si dependa ku government nathi asinako lokho asinayo lezo mali alright siyabulela kakhulu asikho questions ku members of the panel siyasibulela isikhathi sakho but all right, we are moving on to the next presenter. We're going to take a presentation from eThekwini Ratepayers Protest Movement. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. May you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly declare that the evidence you are going to give to this panel is the truth and the whole truth?
I do, and I trust that the evidence that Eskom will present will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth, and that NERSA also acknowledges that what they hear and what they present is the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
You're asking to God to help you to speak the truth, not for other people to represent them.
I'm praying for the whole country.
May you please state your name for the record and the position that you are holding at the organization.
My name is Asad Ghaffar. I represent the eThekwini Ratepayers Protest Movement. We We are a civil organization representing the bigger part of eThekwini. We speak for those who can't speak for themselves. I heard the last presenter saying we are voiceless. No, you're not. We're here. We're going to talk for you.
Thank you. You may start with your presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I will start off with this first slide, which was issued on the 9th of November 2024 from SABC News. You would see that it reported, or SABC News reported, that NERSA rejected the ESCOM 36% tariff increase proposed. And I found it strange that subsequent to this, we were then given this invitation to come in and present to NERSA as to why we are rejecting this high tariff increase. If you had already done this, then I'm confused. I'm not too sure why we're here. So perhaps maybe you as NERSA, you need to give us that clarity. Needless to say, never mind, you've given us this opportunity, so we'll take this opportunity to present to you, the panel, and to ESCOM. The next slide. This slide is the historical tariff for the last 10 years. And it starts from 2014. And you can see this, the year-on-year increase. And it talks to a total increase of 151%. 151% since 2014. The increase in the last 5 years has been 70%. The average consumer price inflation, the CPI, in the last 10 years was 5.2. He's asking me to tone it down. He's saying I'm making you all scared. Okay. In 2022, the average inflation rate was 6.9%. As I mentioned, the tariff increase was 151%, our CPI was 5.2%, and inflation rate therefore was at 69%. And again here we're showing you the municipal tariffs. So for 2026 in total we're looking at a 43.55%. In 2022 the average inflation rate was 6.9%. The projected CPI for 2025 is only expected to trend at 12.26%. The South African Reward Association, and here we're not just thumb-sucking figures, we're giving you facts taken from reputable organizations. Salaries will only increase by 6% in the 2024-2025 financial year. The South African government raised its offer to public servants only by 4.7%. According to a study by the Southern African Labour and Development Research, approximately 20% of South Africans are middle class. The remaining population is divided into the following groups. And here again, I call on the panel, perhaps maybe you will look at the slide in your own time, but if you could just indulge us and look at the screen. The chronically poor are 50% of the population of South Africa. Elite are only 4%. Transient poor are only 11%, and vulnerable middle class is 15%. Madam Chair, I urge you to look at that. 50% are chronically poor. This next slide talks to the marginalized communities. And this is taken from the Auditor General report. The percentage of households with access to basic level of electricity within eThekwini municipal area, 68.5% households will have access to basic level of electricity or had basic level of access of electricity by 30th June, which is only 65.63%. Electricity loss, non-technical as a percentage of electricity percent, sitting at 11.28%. On this slide, I need to talk about this as well. Whilst we come from a very hurtful past, and we can't ignore the fact that apartheid did exist in this country. And when we moved into the new democracy, there was an urgent need to ensure that every South African had access to electricity. We acknowledge this. And we thank Eskom for making that happen. We don't disregard it. But there are other factors that have come into play, and we will get into that. So the fact that we needed to electrify homes or make electricity available to every South African is a reality. And yes, we agree, the cost to supply electricity to these communities does come at a cost. But again, there are other factors that come into play. And here it is, corruption. Corruption has a direct impact on the cost of electricity, especially to the poor. We as consumers, we are picking up the tab for poor governance. We talk about the audit outcome of Eskom in the current audit year has remained stagnant with a qualification on the completeness and accuracy of the irregular expenditure disclosure. This follows 5 financial years of a stagnant position of qualified audit opinion with findings. And Mr. Kasim, you're sitting in this meeting, and you are very well aware that the outcome results of Eskom are not public record. We don't have access. We can't see exactly what you guys are up to, how much of money is being wasted, how much of money is being taken out of Eskom. And that's what we're talking to. So in the interest of transparency and NERSA as the regulator, we urge on you to make those records public. Transmission losses. Again, different power is lost at different stages, so the average loss of power between the power plant and consumers range between 8 to 15%. We acknowledge that. And this is the governance compliance, and I highlight this part in yellow. Investigations into allegations of criminality in Eskom resulting from the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into allegations of state capture led by the Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo, Special Investigation Unit, and other internal and external investigations continue throughout the year. And very little has been done. Very little. Okay, there was some reports of some individuals who were charged and are facing a prosecution, but the vast majority of corruption still remains in Eskom, and that for us is problematic. In South Africa, 79.9% of households use prepaid electricity, whilst 12.1% use a conventional meter. There are over 11 million prepaid meters in South Africa, with Eskom responsible for 6.9 million and municipalities responsible for around 4.5 million. If we are saying 79.9% of electricity users are prepaid, we're talking about the 50% of the poor community. People who cannot afford this increase. And we've spoken about this in our presentation to a eThekwini municipality. A prepaid user, and especially for those who fall in this 50% income bracket, they only have a certain amount of money that they can use to buy electricity. So in other words, the person, and most of us we know, they're earning way below the breadline, less than 2,000 or 3,000 rand a month income. And their budget for electricity would be around 100 rand or 200 rand. And when they get money, they will go and purchase coupons to the value of 100 rand. And they will put it into their prepaid meter. And when the tokens run out, they cannot go and take another 100 rand and go and buy electricity. They will remain without electricity for the remainder of the period. Our research in the last tariff increase found that users were running out of coupons in the 3rd week of the month. This is now going to force them to run out of coupons in the 2nd week of the month. And unlike us, me, and you guys sitting on the panel, and Eskom sitting in the front row, who have the luxury of having continuous supply, these individuals do not have the luxury of going and buying more electricity. They simply don't have money. And for those of you who lived in these communities, you'd know your commitment would be to buy the food for your family, whether it's a 50 kg, 20 kg rice, flour, sugar, etc. You take that, you leave it with your parents. And that's it. That's the food they have for the month. And if they run out of food, they run out of food. Similarly, if they run out of electricity, they run out of electricity. These individuals don't have access to electricity to cook, to heat water, all the luxuries of lights. They move over to paraffin, they move over to candles. This is what we, Eskom, you, NERSA, ourselves, are forcing these individuals into. We're forcing them back to that type of living, electricity with paraffin and candlelight. And I ask you, how does a young South African study when they don't have access to electricity? They don't. And you guys are the cause of that. We know you use a very complicated calculation to come up with the tariff. We studied it. But what it doesn't take into account is the corruption. I think we need to revise the calculation that you guys use to come up with the tariff. And now let's talk about the debt. Because again, NERSA, you have a role to play in this as the regulator. How is it that municipalities are owing Eskom money? And the fact that these municipalities go without any repercussion, and the fact that they owe Eskom a vast amount of money, forces Eskom to increase its tariff. So again, you're perpetuating a bigger problem. And as the regulator, you were mandated to do so. The Electricity Act gave you this power. And the reason why we amended the Electricity Act and brought about NERSA was for you to ensure that this doesn't happen. That you had to ensure that municipalities paid on time. And the fact that they're not paying on time, you have the power to withdraw their licenses. So you need to step in and ensure that municipalities pay Eskom on time so that we don't face this problem. Again, we're going to talk about the fruitless and wasteful expenditure. None of this talks about fruitless and wasteful expenditure, and yet it's a reality. We're paying for fruitless and wasteful expenditure. All these people sitting here are paying for fruitless and wasteful expenditure. We had to cancel the last NERSA engagement. The community came and they showed you the temperature on the ground, how they feel. And NERSA, you abandoned the public hearings because you were afraid of hearing the truth. These people cannot simply carry on like this. I mean, we're faced with a situation now in eThekwini where councillors from eThekwini are booked in hotels. And we have people on the ground who don't have food and don't have electricity. So this needs to stop. Fruitless and wasteful expenditure must stop. This is my conclusion. The proposed municipal tariff of 43.55% is unaffordable, especially to the low and middle income earners. More than 79% of prepaid users made up of the lower income earners will be affected. The projected CPI for 2025 is 5.2%. The proposed salary increase is only 6%. The current 2024-2025 tariff increase is already at a staggering 12.72%. Consumers simply cannot afford a further increase. Poor governance has allowed municipal debt to balloon to over 73 billion rand. Eskom has been avoiding transparency in regards to the fruitless and wasteful expenditure. Eskom has received qualified audits for the last financial years. This speaks to a complete lack of financial management. The proposed tariff punishes the paying consumers. Those connected to the network illegally do not bear this burden. Failure to address the rising epidemic of illegal connections is unjust and undemocratic. Paying consumers are being forced to accommodate the revenue lost in this regard, making for an unsustainable future of repeated increases. The methodology used to calculate Eskom's tariff increase is skewed in that it does not take into account poor governance. High tariff increases are not conducive to economic growth. What I also need to add to this, and Eskom, I'm sure you're aware, Nessa, you're also aware, that those who fall within the 5% category, those that are super rich, are going off the grid. You know this. They can afford to go off the grid. They're moving to alternate energy resource, either solar or whatever, wind or whatever, and they're going off the grid. And the more people that go off the grid puts a bigger burden on the paying consumer, and especially the poor. And we're seeing this in the Western Cape. We're seeing the tariff increase in the Western Cape. For those who are poor, they have to pay a higher tariff. But those who can afford have come off the grid. And this trend will continue throughout the country, where the super rich will come off the grid, and those of us who can't afford alternate energy will be forced to pick up a higher tariff. So NERSA, we hold you accountable. We hold NERSA accountable to ensure that we can find solutions to this. Eskom is going to come and they're going to try and justify and give us a million reasons why they need to increase the tariff. And I'm saying, I'm pleading to you, NERSA, ignore whatever they tell you. Ask them to fix their house first before they can come and say, we need more money. That needs to happen. NERSA, you need to reject it point blank. Do not accept any reason Eskom will give us, because we're tired. Seriously, we are absolutely tired. We cannot afford to take another tariff increase. Thank you.
Very much. Thank you very much. Before you go down, you asked NERSA to clarify the statement by SABC, which indicated that NERSA rejected the 36% increase by Eskom. That is not the case. We are still in the process. We have not taken a decision. We have not even, we're just busy with the evaluation itself, and we're consulting the members of the public as it is required in terms of our own legislation, which is why we have these public hearings. And in that regard, NERSA has issued a media statement on 11 November 2024, correcting the incorrect statement that was made by SABC. So we are still in the process of considering the application by Eskom.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to again do a roll call just to check if the other presenters have now arrived, and then we'll break for tea. When we come back, we'll take those that are available, and then also if Eskom could kindly prepare yourself for the concluding remarks and the responses to the issues that were raised here in Durban and also previously by NERSA in the other public hearings, and respond to those. So I just want to do the roll call again, starting off with Zamimpilo, Farming NPC, Bheki Mdletshe. Do we have Bheki Mdletshe now? We still don't have Bheki Mdletshe, who was supposed to be the person who presented to present at 9:10 this morning. Okay. I'm going to South African Cane Growers Association. Do we now have Richard Nicholson? Richard Nicholson, we don't. Okay, Richard Nicholson was given a time slot at 10 to 10 this morning. Going to other members of the public, I'll again call out their names just to check, because they were supposed to have done their presentations at 10:30, and I've got the names of Phumelele Ncwane, Ntumseni Nyandu, Happy Kumete, as well as Sandile Vezi. So we still don't have those four. who were supposed to present at 10:30 this morning. I just want to check if we have Green Thumbs Society. Do we have Green Thumbs Society? Okay, if you can kindly check this one, Walter, because this one was supposed to present after 11. So it's important that we check if they are still on their way. City Power will not be presenting today due to the issue of the lack of flights from Johannesburg to Durban. Okay, I just want to also check if we have Sizwe Shiba. Sizwe Shiba, if you can also check with him, because he was also supposed to present around 11 o'clock or past 11. Then if we, I see that I've seen the DA here. I'm not sure if the DA is going to present today. If you can inform us, Mr. Mabunda, the DA did not take up its slot yesterday. I am not sure if they are requesting to do a presentation today, as they didn't take up their slot. Same as NUMSA, Mzamo Khoza. I don't know if we have. We were going to give them an opportunity again today if they are available. And then the third one that was supposed to present yesterday but did not pitch was Phoenix Tenants and Residents Association. So those were the three presenters that we allocated them time yesterday. So we're going to give them an opportunity today should we have more time. So if they are available, we can still grant them the opportunity to present. At this point in time, I would like us to break for tea. We'll break for 15 minutes and also just allow ESCOM to prepare its presentations and include issues that have been raised this morning and indicate how they are going to take those into consideration and ask NERSA to consider their responses. We're now breaking for tea. The time is now 10:43. We'll come back here at 11 o'clock. Thank you very much. we just give water, maybe 1 minute. May you please come back, take up your seats so that we can resume with the hearing. All right, thank you very much. Please take up your seats. We want to resume and we are ready to proceed. I just want to again now, just before I call on ESCOM to come forward, I just want to again do the last roll call. Bheki Mdletshe, Zamimpilo Farming NPC, uBheki Mdletshe did not take up the opportunity that he was given. Okay, we also want to put on record that South African Cane Growers Association also did not take up the opportunity that was granted to them, as they were supposed to have presented at 10 to 10 this morning. Also, the other members of the public that did not come today is Phumelele Ncwane, Duduzi Mnyandu, Happy Gumede, and Zandile Vezi. Again, they are not here. They were supposed to have presented at 10:30. So we take it. Green Thumbs Society is also not here, but they indicated now during tea break that they will submit or forward their presentation to NERSA to take into consideration. Sizwe Shiba, Duduzweni Center, Sizwe Shiba. Again, we did not hear anything from Sizwe Shiba. The other presenters that we thought we could give them the opportunity today was NUMSA. NUMSA is, has indicated that they are covered by the views stated by their leader in Johannesburg or Gauteng, Ivan Jim, so they will not present. The Democratic Alliance also did not take up the slot yesterday and also today. The Phoenix Tenants and Residents Association, they were also represented by somebody else. So we are now left with ESCOM. ESCOM would like to invite you to come forward for your concluding remarks as well as responding to the issues that were raised and indicate how you are going to address some of the concerns as part of this application. Over to you, ESCOM. For the record, ESCOM, since this is the continuation of the hearing here in Durban and we are on day 2, we will not administer the oath. The oath that was administered on you yesterday remains valid.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Chair, I'd like to call 2 colleagues that's going to assist with, they didn't swear in yesterday, so we swear them in today. Thanks. Come, Eric and Daphne.
Okay. May you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly declare that the evidence you are going to provide to this panel is the truth and the whole truth?
Chair, I do.
Thank you very much. Please state your name and your designation at ESCOM for the record.
Good morning to the panel and good morning, colleagues. My name is Eric Shanmugam. I'm a general manager in the Generation Division.
Thank you very much. You may step forward, sis. If you probably want to adjust, thank you very much. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly declare that the evidence you're going to provide to this panel is the truth and the whole truth?
I do, Chair.
All right. Please state your name and your designation at ESCOM for the record.
My name is Daphne Mukwena and I'm the ESCOM spokesperson.
Thank you very much. You may proceed, Mr. Kasem.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, Chairperson, members of the panel, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to give some introductory remarks on the hearings and the presentations we received over the past 2 days, some comments on that, go into a little more detail as the overall feedback from the public hearings. Then my colleagues will assist with specific topics and then I will close, Chairperson. Chairperson, first and foremost, I think I've been dealing with these public hearings for a number of years. We stand up here, we take the oath in the manner that it's intended, that we present honest evidence in front of the panel as well as the public. So I just want to reiterate, and we take it very seriously. Chair, there were comments in general around the financials and where's the financials. Firstly, ESCOM has issued a sense we intend publishing our March 24 financials by the 20th of December. Mr. Assad has asked about irregular expenditure, fruitless and wasteful, and other colleagues as well, even in yesterday's presentation. presentation, I think Mr. Bo Dayal as well. That is included in our financial statements as well as our integrated report, which is on our website. Chair, and I've explained this previously, I think firstly with regard to irregular expenditure, we do receive goods and service for that, so there is value that is received. Yes, in terms of the PFMA, and correctly highlighted that proper process, and maybe there were things missing in the process that we didn't follow, and that's how we're looking to improve around the governance. But the point there is value that Eskom had received. Fully acknowledge that fruitless and wasteful, and that's why it is termed fruitless and wasteful. That's where we don't receive any value for that expenditure, and that's disclosed in a separate category in our financials. Chair, I think some of the key themes that have come up at the hearings and even today, I must also appreciate Palile that had the courage to come and stand up here and present. It is a daunting task. I remember the first time I had to present publicly, but it's great that you had the courage to do it, and we heard you, and not only the panel, but Eskom has also heard you, because the key message there was also educated youth are struggling to find job employment in South Africa, and that needs to be addressed at a government level. So as Eskom, where we do have programs that we have in terms of youth apprenticeships, etc. We'll obviously look into that, and again, not only because what we've heard from you today, but over the course of these hearings, how can we also increase our investment in those programs? So, Chair, if I touch on some of the themes in terms of the hearings, I think first and foremost, the whole issue around the challenges in South Africa around the economy of poverty, inequality, unemployment, and what it does come down today, the lady from the Ratepayers Association, Ms. Catherine, presented around a pensioner having to balance that pension money of 2,190 and balancing that with buying electricity, putting food on the table, as well as having to pay for your medicine that you need, and that electricity, depending on your circumstances, you need the refrigeration to keep the medicine in the state that is required. So that is a key issue, and throughout the hearings, there was also calls for many pensioners to say, as the regulator, as Eskom, as municipalities and government, maybe we must look as part, when we do these tariffs, how do we protect the pensioners, that there's a level of increase that they can barely absorb, and understanding that and what it means, that's something I believe we should look into. And then also, if you bring into that child-headed households, living on those grants, these are mechanisms and issues that need to be raised across government as well. At the end of the day, we have highlighted, Chairperson, that the administration and the utilization of the full quantity of free basic electricity that's available from what National Treasury includes in the national budget, we're only seeing a 20% uptake on that, and that is an area, I think, working in conjunction with the municipalities, SALGA and government, that has to be utilized as part of our proposal as Eskom in terms of the retail tariff plan. We're also proposing that be increased to 150 kilowatts per hour, obviously taking cognizance of the fact that National Treasury will have to fund it, and they will have to see what the budgets at a national level can afford, but that's a proposal we have put through as Eskom. And then the other important point, and it was clearly highlighted here today, when you don't have electricity, then you resort to alternate means. That brings a lot of safety risks to the households and to the citizens. When you resort to candles, paraffin, fires, etc., that increases the risk. And as was highlighted here, I do recall, I think it was yesterday, where one of the presenters mentioned that to then go to the hospital and see a colleague that was burnt because of alternate sources of energy. So it really comes down to dealing with the issue of the energy poverty in the country that needs to also be addressed. Clearly, one of the other themes that came across this 2.5 weeks was frustration around municipalities and service delivery, including Eskom ourselves in the areas of supply that we have in our jurisdiction, where customers have told us we are absent in terms of that customer service. We need to engage with the community much more often. Here, the community, and in Soweto, they said, come and speak to us and engage with us. We also have solutions, and don't only think you can do it yourself. So that is something we have taken on board. Daphne will touch a bit on that when she presents, but that's a key message we have received as Eskom from these hearings. I think, Chairperson, the other issue around, and it was explained at these hearings as well, is around security and protection of infrastructure. Because to replace that infrastructure, firstly, comes at a cost. Secondly, it puts those residents in periods where they don't have supply. And more importantly, we got to work with law enforcement communities to reduce those illegal connections. Colleagues have presented in these hearings how prepaid meters are being bypassed. Very impressed with the amount of research done by the institutions and the communities around prepaid. I mean, we would also like to have visibility of that and the recommendations and the learnings around prepaid. We've seen just in our KRN2 rollout that 400 extra customers that then come into the customer category of now as paying. So it's an area that as a country we need to look into much more seriously and urgently, because effectively then you can get more customers into the base. So, Chair, the other key question that came up again, and we fully acknowledge that this application in terms of the methodology is about passing on efficient costs. NERSA has challenged us, the public has challenged us around our operating costs, our primary energy costs. And what we have shown in these hearings, and we've responded to the regulator, and we still got questions that we will respond in writing as well, that if you look at on the absolute basis in terms of where we're spending in terms of primary energy and operating costs, those increases are single digit. However, we really have to explain why then the jump from the regulator's determination in 2025 to 2026, as I presented yesterday, then you see the subsequent increases being flatter. So we did highlight that. We showed what's happening with our staff complement. That trend is coming down, recognizing there is a need for areas of skill that's required as we then deliver on the maintenance and the transition that Eskom is undertaking as well. Eskom is not against renewables. We clearly, as part of our strategy, intend playing in renewables. Government has now supported us to participate in renewables, so that will come through in the future. There's no significant or any amounts in this MYPD6 application. That will come through subsequently in conjunction with the repurposing and repowering of the older stations. I spoke about the KRN2 and yes, in terms of that performance, and we've taken it on board that the members and have asked us, yes, our EAF has improved from 55% sitting close to 63%, and that has helped reduce the OCGT spend that we're incurring and have requested in this application. But rightfully so, the regulator has challenged us on that, and we're working on those numbers, Chairperson. We will then respond in writing into that updated information regarding the production plan. But today, Eric will just talk around some of the elements in terms of that and what we're seeing, what space it creates in terms of the improved performance. I think Mr. Naidu, if I recall, he presented important aspects around GDP, inflation, etc. And yes, we've highlighted that not all of Eskom's costs are driven by inflation. There are various factors that go into the different categories of costs, but also we know the benefit of reliable supply of electricity that has resulted in positive investor sentiment into South Africa. And yes, some commentators have said we shouldn't congratulate a fish for swimming. But if you look at where has Eskom come from, the country has been exposed to load shedding for the last 15 years or so, and 8 months, and to panel member Mr. Mkhize, we're counting until the end of the year, and then we're going to stop counting because we need to make that the norm going forward. But just getting back to the importance of GDP and investor confidence, myself and the CEO, we attended a conference representing South Africa as an investor destination in New York and the UK through the JSE Tomorrow conference. And the two positive feedbacks we received from the investors for South Africa was the importance of the recovery and stability of electricity supply, and in the formation of the GNU, and the fact that the country continued from a government level. We do accept, Chairperson, that other issues of load reduction has been raised here in Durban as well throughout the country, but appreciating that from an Eskom perspective, when the network on the distribution side is overloaded, to protect that network and the transformers from exploding, then load reduction is implemented. But our understanding, it's not only in Eskom supply areas, it's in municipal areas, and again, we need to work in conjunction with communities. Chairperson, the other question yesterday was asked around coal and transport. As our preference and our strategy, first and foremost, the cheapest form and the safest form of putting coal into the power stations is via the conveyor belts and directly from the mines. That's the first source. The second source is via rail, and we need to work in conjunction with Transnet to improve and take more coal off the roads onto rail, and then as a last resort to get that commodity and that product to the power station, we make use of trucks. And unfortunately, the one presenter yesterday, a family member was lost because of these accidents, and that's why as Eskom we are driving that to get more of the coal delivered on rail and conveyor going forward. One is a lower cost, but most importantly safety to the citizens of the country. So, Chairperson, I think at this point I'm going to hand over to Eric to take you through some generation feedback. Thanks.
Good day, Chair and colleagues. I think what I want to do is, these questions have been raised at quite a few platforms, and I thought it's important to spend some time in some detail. It is technical, but I will try to convey the message so that I think the panel understands. And I think the first issue, which was linked to, I think, security of supply as well as us stopping load shedding, was around the units that has been decided in terms of continued operations. So I just want to give you some detail around that in terms of what was in the application of MYPD 5 and how does that now fare to MYPD 6 and give clarity to the difference. And so you'll see on the table on the left-hand side, specifically the stations go from top to bottom on the extreme left-hand side, and then what we've described is the number of units at each of the power stations. We've specifically highlighted in red the stations as well as the units. And what you will acknowledge is that 16 units have been shut down. That's 9 at Kumati, 4 at Hendrina, and 3 at Grootvlei. Of importance is that we had a catastrophic failure at Duva, and when we did the financial justification, it was not feasible considering the constraints. So Duva 3 was also not returned and is defined as inoperable. So in terms of those specific 17 units, none of these units are planned to be returned, and they are not catered for in the RAB. So I just want to give that clarity to the panel. Then moving on to what has been the fundamental change in the strategy between the previous submission and this submission. I think, colleagues, in my previous presentation, you would have seen that around this time last year, we were experiencing load shedding. And as of the 26th of March this year, load shedding has stopped. And with the new board and the new EXCO joining, together with the appointment of the Minister of Electricity, it would not have been a wise decision to continue to shut down the units of the older stations. So when you really look at what has changed, 17 units, and how do I break down those 17 units? There's 3 at Grootvlei, there's 6 at Hendrina, and 8 at Camden. In the submission, they were planned to be shut down in terms of the previous strategy. And with now the revised decision and the revised strategy, we will continue running these stations until 2030. In this application, there were also a further 2 stations, Arnott, which had 4 units, and 3 units at Creel, were also planned to be shut down in this coming MYPD. And so collectively, Chair, the units at these 5 stations, there's a conscious decision to run them until 2030. I want to give assurance that in terms of the decision made, there was a thorough financial justification done, a detailed and comprehensive technical evaluation. We looked at the social compact, and what's most important, in the absence of the new capacity coming on board from renewables from the IRP 2019, it was best to actually have these units because you had megawatts on the bar. And how does this contribute? So over the last year, from the 26th of March, these units have actually contributed twofold, is that there's 4,100 megawatts available on the system from these units. And obviously, we talk about a 63% average load factor. But more importantly, it has had a direct correlation to the savings of the OCGTs. So when one does a year-on-year comparison on the diesel usage, there's a 17 billion rand savings in terms of year-on-year. The other important comparison was to say, if we didn't have these units, what would have been the impact in terms of terawatt hours? And so these 17 units have contributed 9.4 terawatt hours, which is 7.2% of the total, which mitigated against a much more expensive resource. And the latest studies show that OCGTs are 7,500 megawatt per hour, and against the trade-off of load shedding, which is 10,000. So when we had the dark days, it was still cheaper to use OCGTs to load shedding. But now that we have justified technically, financially, as well as no environmental breach on running these 17 units, it's still the cheapest option. Chair, we've also done a comparison in terms of the levelized cost. And when you compare this to all the other alternatives, these units still come out as being the cheapest in terms of supply to the country. Of importance is that what this also does, it contributes to the energy trilemma. So we look at system security, it's a tick, we've actually resolved for that. We look at affordability, and from an affordability point of view, it's the best decision for the country. But most importantly is in terms of the energy trilemma is the sustainability. When one looks at the learnings from Kumati, and you'll see Kumati is highlighted in red, all units were shut down. We didn't really have a plan to actually help the local communities. So what this now allows, the change strategy allows for us to recalibrate the just energy transition. And what you will see is that we will do repowering and repurposing, which will run concurrently to while these stations are still running. So you got units at Grootvlei, Camden and Hendrina that are running, and Eskom has acquired land adjacent to these power stations. We will use that land in actually ensuring that we do repowering, and repowering by using the cleaner technologies, that's solar, that's wind and battery. And then together with that, we will also do repurposing. And I think with repurposing, these are sort of touch and feel projects where the communities start to benefit. So just to then give you a bit of perspective in terms of what's been the impact of us now retaining these units in the current application. And so we've compared the assumptions of the MYPD with discontinued operations before and now that we've got this change strategy. For the units expected to shut down, initially there was limited maintenance planned. It didn't make sense to actually cater for them because they were being planned to shut down in this submission. However, with us now running these units up to 2030, it's the most responsible thing to do if you're considering safety of plant and safety of people. So we've now catered for this maintenance to ensure that we can contribute to its reliability and improve performance. And what you will see is that the total maintenance increase in MYPD5 to MYPD6 is 23 billion. And if you then zoom into these specific 5 stations, Camden, Grootvlei, Hendrina, Arnott, Creel, this increase for these 5 stations is 8.4 billion. And that's pretty much represents 36.4% of the total. So the details are in the submission, but I thought it's important to surface these issues in response to the questions raised by the committee members. Then moving on to the issue around energy availability factor. And I think the chair has been vociferous in our roadshows throughout the country. And I think the CFO has confirmed and committed to the detailed studies being done. So in the submission, there will be a detailed written submission. But I thought it's important that we give you some insight to 2 dimensions. One is the energy utilization factor, EUF, and then the other is the energy availability factor. And what's important is that if you look at the VGB response to the international benchmark in terms of how our coal fleet has been performing, it's been trending over many years around 82 to 90%. So if you really go back even to the window before 2024. So what this graph highlights is 2 aspects, is that when one looks at the MYPD application, we try to highlight the energy utilization factor for MYPD6, and we try to give context to what would be the impact of increasing the energy availability factor, looking at the existing base, but taking it up by 1.5% per annum. And what you will see in terms of the current application for MYPD6, the EUF drops to 52% in FY 2028 and 45% in FY 30. Now, this hasn't been seen in the system for many years, Chair. These machines have been getting older. The average life of the power fleet is 50 years, and running these machines at utilization factors of higher than 80 does cause a lot of stress. It does have an impact on maintenance. It does have an impact on capital spend. So what you're seeing moving forward is a very different window. I mean, a scenario in terms of the performance of EUF. But this is also against the backdrop of new IPPs coming in, as well as contributing to the growth. So what's important is that if you really look at this graph, what Eskom is highlighting is that there is space for increasing the capacity. And the studies show us that if you move the energy utilization factor from 52% to 75%, and this is the energy utilization factor, what we can create is an extra 7,300 megawatts into the grid. And this clearly, I think, is exciting in terms of creating the growth that the country does need. Linked to that, what I want to highlight is increasing the EAF assumption by 1.5% then does a counter on EUF. And what it does is you'll see potentially a 1% drop by increasing the EAF. Of importance is that what this means is that the EUF will then move from for 51 to 75%, would provide then this additional 7,800. So what I'm highlighting is from the existing base, by adding another 1.5%, you would see a 500 megawatt growth in terms of capacity. And all of this, Chair, will be included in the submission, the detailed submission, but we must also learn from the past. And when one looks at the RRP 2019 and the excitement in terms of the new renewable capacity coming on board, it didn't realize, and it meant that Eskom had to be the battery. That's the bottom line. Eskom had to be the support in terms of the contribution, and I do appreciate the last few years have not been good in terms of load shedding, not good for the country, not good for the people, and not good for the economy. So we must ask ourselves, if we do have this space, can we grow if the IPPs do not penetrate as planned? And we anxiously await the actual RRP 2024. So we've had some discussions and we heard about renewable resources. And in the Eskom environment, I wake up looking at renewables, I go to bed looking at renewables, at 3 in the morning I'm awake looking at renewables. And let me give you some reality of what we experience in the system. I think as an organization, we are actually embracing the transition. We will actually decarbonize and we will move into clean technologies. In fact, in our submission and through support of government, we will be allowed to participate now in renewables, which is a change from the previous strategy. But what I want to highlight is that when one looks at wind and one looks at solar, you know, we are highly dependent on what happens on that current day. If there's no sunlight, and I'll give you some experiences of that, where do you get this energy? If there's no wind, where do you get this resource? So just in terms of this not being a constant, reliable resource, we have to plan to constantly supply to ensure that we match the demand. So let me give you two current realities. In Gauteng, or let's say even here in KZN, you're exposed to quite a lot of bulky clouds in summer. And that also happens in Gauteng. So you could have up to 3-4 days of no sun in Gauteng with rain. And what does this mean? This means that the Eskom system needs to support this resource. And in Gauteng, we could see up to 1,000 megawatts that disappears from the system. So we have some great resources, and I want to acknowledge that we get great support of these renewable resources, but when it's not there, then the ESCOM system, and I call it the big battery, needs to support the system. Let me give you another current reality. So we all know what happens when we have the cold fronts in Cape Town. So we have beautiful wind resources then coming from the Eastern and Western Cape because of the wind, and this is in winter. The nice thing is in winter, we also get the wind resources through the evening, so it actually helps support. But this is where the drama happens. So when you get the cold front coming through from the Cape, it's followed by a cold trough. And what does that mean? It then means in Gauteng, you actually then get the cold weather coming through. Followed by the cold trough, you would actually get anything between 1,000 and 1,200 megawatts of wind resources that disappears. And then you are hit with a double whammy effect, because in Gauteng you then get the colder weather, you then get the cloudy weather, you get the consumers in Gauteng actually drawing more energy because of the colder weather.
May you please try again, Mr. Eric?
So with the cold weather, you then have up to 1,500 megawatts that disappears from the system. And so once again, the ESCOM system needs to actually cater for this. And two important aspects happen here. It depends on which units we've pulled back. There's a high dependence then for us to use these OCGT resources to help us through those short periods to get us through the peaks. So it's very important to highlight that ESCOM is this battery that needs to support the system. I think in terms of renewables that are coming online, it has to come online together with battery storage or with gas. It's important so that we can get through the morning peak and evening peak. And so with this, there's also the other two aspects. As the coal stations start to actually shut down and we replace them with cleaner, more specifically solar and wind resources, one talks about inertia in the energy system. You don't actually have that inertia. When one looks at Natal needs a lot of voltage support and frequency support. And so this is where you look at your ancillary services, and this is where you actually get this from our base load. And so this is going to also then, I think in terms as we move forward, is going to call for a reconfiguration of the system to actually cater for this. So Chair, I just want to highlight that when you really look at now where there's an abundance of these resources in the Eastern Cape, in the Western Cape, Northern Cape, I think we have acknowledged through the presentations coming from the NTCSA, there's a need for us to connect quickly to this, and that's catered for, is that we will need these networks to actually start to penetrate to the Eastern Cape, Western Cape, and Northern Cape. So I think having said that, I think in the bigger scheme, when one looks at solar, wind, and the effect on the overall system, we would need to have dispatchable power to cater for these changes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, Chair, and good morning to the panel. And ngibulise nabahlali base KZN. Chair, I'm going to respond to a request that was made in one of the public hearings of ESCOM giving customers what we call a flat rate. I'm going in the wrong direction. So maybe before I start to probably give what ESCOM proposes in terms of this request, Chair, let me just explain what a flat rate means. So basically what the customers are requesting here, am I too close to? What the customers are requesting is a fixed amount that they want to pay every month for electricity consumption. But this consumption is irrespective of how much would they have used per month. So an example is given there, it's 350 rands per month. But if I compare myself, if I take two customers for an example, if I have backyard dwellers, say 10 backyard dwellers and the main house, and I've got another customer next door with just one house without backyard dwellers, we all pay 350 rands irrespective of what we consume. So that is what the flat rate means. And this proposal as well is to encourage some contribution towards the service that they receive, that is the customers. So Chair, in as much as we appreciate that customers, I don't know, I sound, yeah, okay. In as much as we appreciate that customers do really want to pay for the services that they receive, we'd also want NERSA to consider this proposal by the following, or to consider the following. So in accordance with the NERSA mandate in the Electricity Regulation Act, all the tariffs, the rates, the prices, revenues for all the licensees, ESCOM, including municipalities, are determined by NERSA. Thus, ESCOM and municipalities can only implement what NERSA approves. And the second thing is that when NERSA has determined a proposal, which we take it that it will be within the legislative framework, NERSA will undertake to do consultations before it could actually make a decision like we are sitting in this session. The Electricity Regulation Act also requires licensees like ESCOM and municipalities to recover efficient cost and a fair return on investment. Hence, the flat rate does not comply with this legislation. The other thing is that the electricity pricing policy requires efficient consumption, and flat rate undermines the effort to transition towards a sustainable energy practices. Because what it does is that I can consume as much as I want as long as I have paid the 350 or the 100 rands. ESCOM and municipalities also need to migrate towards financial sustainability, Chair. Hence, the flat rate works against this migration and putting more strain on us or ESCOM being able to provide a service, because whatever that the customer will be consuming, there will be a gap in terms of the excess of energy that is not being paid for. So, in order for us, Chair, to meet our obligations or our financial and operational obligations, whilst we also fostering the socio-economic resilience of our vulnerable customers, because we take that these are vulnerable customers or communities that are in a situation that they do not choose to be in. So there's a few proposals, Chair, that we have actually putting across to NERSA, that one, we need to prioritize on the making sure that in one of the presentation we did mention that there's about 10 million indigent communities or families in South Africa or across the country, and only 2 million or about 2 million are actually participating in this free basic electricity program. So what we are proposing there is that we start focusing on ensuring that all those eligible families, they do participate in this program. And one of the issues, Chair, that we have come across in terms of why customers are not accessing this 8 million families, why most of them are not accessing this program is because of this program is just one tedious process for one to actually register as an indigent. So we need to streamline the process to ensure that we have all the 10 million customers registered for this free basic electricity benefit. The other proposal, Chair, is for government to consider increasing free basic electricity to 150 kilowatt hour per month. Currently, the free basic electricity states that a family or a household will receive or receives 50 kilowatt hours. And we find that unattractive as well. And besides, Chair, 50 kilowatt hours, that measures how much energy or electricity I can consume over a certain period and what appliances I can use. So for 50 kilowatt hours, definitely it's less appliances and less time. However, if we increase the 50 kilowatt hours to 150 kilowatt hours, so customers would actually have more appliances to use over more period of time within a month. But we also need to make sure that we also introduce, Chair, some technological and behavioral changes in terms of us introducing or extending this to 150 kilowatt hours. And what do I mean by that, Chair? We need also to ensure that customers use efficient appliances so that they can use more of this 150 kilowatt hours. And we also educate our customers in terms of which appliances actually consumes how much energy and how tips on how they can save electricity and still, use the 150 kilowatt hours, which can take them closer to the end of the month. And how we calculated that 150 kilowatt hours, one of the things that, or the models that we used was to look at, you would have seen in the recent days, we have spoken about zero buyers, which are customers that are consuming electricity, however not paying for it. So we looked at how much are they using over a period of a month, and we came on an average of 150 kilowatt hours, Chair. And lastly, Chair, ESCOM has implemented additional prepaid meters to promote efficient and sustainable energy consumption. So currently, Chair, we've got about 7.25 as ESCOM million customers that are on prepaid, and we also believe that prepaid, using a prepaid meter, customers can also manage how they use electricity and manage the amount of electricity, the amount of electricity that they use, looking at how much they can also afford. And what we are now rolling out as well, so we've got these 7.25 million meters of prepaid customers, but we also need to move into more smarter meters. We have started with the process. We have done about 600,000 smart meters, or installed 600,000 smart meters out there, but we want to roll out that project to all our 7.25 million customers, so that they can be able to manage, because a smart meter, there's more data that customer can actually use in order for a customer to use electricity efficiently. And there are also ways in which we can also manage, especially during peak hours, how we introduce some of these new proposals that we would like to implement, Chair. So And what we have seen as well, Chair, with the prepaid meters is that there has been a significant improvement in our collection. And so in closing on this matter, Chair, what we are saying as ESCOM is that if we collaborate with government and other stakeholders, we believe that we can come with comprehensive solutions, not just these ones that we have mentioned, but additional solutions that will actually deal with or address the issues that we have of socio-economic issues that we have for our vulnerable communities. So, Chair, the other matter that I would like to deal with is our customer contact methods. Having listened to most of the hearings, Chair, as ESCOM, it seemed like we are not giving our customer the desired experience that they deserve. So, Chair, what we have done, in the years, listening and working with different categories of our customers, was to introduce or digitize our customer interface. And you will see on the screen there, we've got different platforms or tools. And these are digital tools, except the one of telephone agent, and IVR, of course, which we are using or allowing, or we have introduced our customers to make use of. And what these are, Chair, they promote what we call a self-service interface with our customers, where our customers don't have to visit our hubs, because I think earlier on we did hear that, traveling cost also is an issue for our customers. So when a customer can do or can contact us or interface with us comfortably at their homes, we felt that that is one of the efficient ways of interfacing with our customers. So we introduced different types of tools, which we are also improving as we learn more about these tools in terms of the experiences our customers are telling us of. So one of the tool is the Alfred chatbot. The other one is the unstructured supplementary service data, which is a or what we call USSD, and this also Alfred requires one to have internet, but USSD doesn't require one to have internet. As long as you've got a phone, you can use USSD, and it's a two-way data communication between you and ESCOM. Then we've got my ESCOM app, which also it's a tool that customers can download for free and use for logging queries. Those that are on postpaid can also look at their billing balances, and we also have what we call customer services online, which customers also can use too. It's a communication portal as well, or protocol as well, that customers can use. We also have an interactive voice response where you can dial in at that 08600 ESCOM number, and you can have that automated menu where you can interact with ESCOM, whether you want to log a fault or want to check your balances or whatever that one would want to interact with us. Then lastly, Chair, we've got what we call the call center, where we've got agents 24/7 that take calls from our customers, and the number is similar to our IVR. It's also 08600 ESCOM. The reason why we introduce these other platforms, Chair, is because other than customers complaining that your offices or your hubs are far, it costs us more money to visit you. Also on the our contact center, customers complained as well that long queues, you stand for a very long time on a queue, and you obviously you get your airtime depleted. So hence we're saying if you use those other channels, then you don't have to use a lot of, depending on whether you are using Vodacom or MTN or what's the other one? Cell C, depending on what they charge, but under normal circumstances, they charge very minimal amount. So we prefer that the customers use this self-service, because if, for instance, you are logging a fault, you'll get a reference number, and through that reference number, you can also use that reference number to actually monitor your call in terms of how far is ESCOM in addressing your call. So we also have escalation process. So for example, if all that had failed, what I showed in the first screen, where self-services have failed, you tried to call ESCOM, the call center, you just waited for hours, or you still feel that the agent didn't give you the service that you require. So we do have an escalation process. So firstly, our escalation process starts with an escalation to our customer relations area manager, and for each and every cluster or province, we do have a contact that you can use. That is, if you want to escalate your issue. So for an example, if you call our contact center, you'll have to choose for a certain number, say for KZN, I think it's a 3 if I'm not mistaken, and you will be assisted. If that also fails, Chair, one has to then elevate that escalation to level 2, where then your issue or your query will be handled by the provincial executive management. For an example, in KZN, there you will use the 4th one that says KwaZulu-Natal. So there's an email address there where you can log your issue, so that we've got a team that looks at these calls, receive these emails, and they will respond to their customer. So we always prefer that the customer should at least name please give us your name. You must also give us the reference number if you have, or your meter number, and state what the issue is, and also your contact details, so that we can also contact you, not just your email address. If that fails, then you can also escalate to the last level, which is our executive customer care, which is at corporate level or at our head office. We also have a team that will handle your issue. Similarly, you use that email address, but similarly as well, you'll have to give us your reference number, your meter number, at least, or account number, and you also have to give us your your contact details, either your mobile number, so that we can be able to contact you if there is a need.
Maybe some of this detail, because I don't think people will be able to write them down and understand exactly. So I think the most efficient way is for ESCOM to make sure that you also write it in different languages, so that they can be accessed by everyone, and find ways in which you can make this information available to the communities and customers that you are serving. So let us utilize that opportunity, because it will be ESCOM's opportunity from the customer relations point of view. But also
Thanks.
just make sure that you do pay attention to the issue that was raised. Remember, not everybody is going to have access to the phone that will be charged at all times. If they have 5 hours of load reduction in certain areas, and they might not be able to even conduct ESCOM because they don't have.
Thanks, Chair, for that. And lastly, Chair, we also have names in case everything fails in terms of the escalation, which I doubt, because it cannot be that all those escalation you would not be attended to. But if your issue, or you feel that your issue is not attended to the way you want it to be attended to, we also have for each and every province, we've got our colleagues that can assist customers, Chair. For an example, in KZN, we've got Joyce Zingoni, who is responsible for KZN and Free State, and that is the person, and that's her email address. She can also be contacted there. Please also provide your reference number. Reiterate on that, Chair, your reference number, your meter number, and your contact number, so that we can also contact you if there's more information that is required. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Chair. Just to wrap up in terms of the conclusion, Chair, I spoke about this yesterday in terms of the affordability, and it was covered today, so I'm not going to spend time on that. So in conclusion, Chair, we know FPE is an opportunity for the country. Let's work together with government on that. In terms of the NPAs, the questioner has asked, and we demonstrated why the country needs the NPAs to retain some of those industries while they do experience these difficult cycles in terms of their business sectors. We've spoken about ESCOM's application and the benefit that we've been receiving from government in terms of support. At the end of the debt relief window, just under 500 billion worth of support. Chair, the four components of dealing with the tariff, dealing with the balance sheet, our own cost efficiencies, and collecting what is due from us in terms of municipalities as well as Metro. I think most importantly, Chair, at the end of the day, yourself as the regulator have a very difficult job in balancing this decision of what ESCOM has put forward to yourselves as the regulator, and balancing that what is required to sustain ESCOM in terms of its operational needs going forward, but also then balancing the affordability and what the consumers can pay for electricity. Chair, and then maybe last but not least, I think what is a clear message is we need to work also with government around some of these key issues that were raised over this last 2.5 weeks. And then just to conclude, Chair, as part of the process, there are 3 separate revenue, allowable revenue applications that comprise the total ESCOM group that's in front of the regulator. We've taken all the inputs from the public as well as the regulator. We will work with that as ESCOM. We still owe more information to NERSA, which we will supply. And we also want to just take the opportunity of the feedback you've given us. Myself and the team have taken that on board, and we will work to improve, because we know it's not only about the supply of electricity to the country, but also getting that confidence. But I think another key message is balancing access, affordability, security of supply, but also the sustainability of supply going forward as a country. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you very much. ESCOM for the presentation. May I please not be interrupted? The rules are that if there's a member of the public that wishes to pose a question to the presenter, that member of the public will write the question in a piece of paper and then hand it over to Walter Mamunda, and then we can be able to read out the question of clarity. For instance, we have just received the question of clarity from the member of the public, which we will then put to ESCOM for the record. But we can't take questions, otherwise it's going to be a bit difficult to manage the process. ESCOM, maybe Mr. Kasim, if you want to take a seat so that you can write down the questions, and then you will come back to respond to the questions. There are questions of clarity. Some of them come from the members of the public, and we may also get maybe another question of clarity from another member of the public who stood up there. Ms. Simane?
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson, and good afternoon once again, ladies and gentlemen. This is from the member of the public. It's a comment. The first one is 3 points. The first one is ESCOM customer service centers are not operational. That's the first one. The second one, their telephone lines do not get answered. One holds on for a long period and it gets cut off. And the last one is the online portal does not work. There are no responses received. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. There were also issues raised by the members of the public talking about the way in which the technical staff that are dealing with the customers, the way that they handle themselves and the issues that are raised by customers, and also some of the connections that ESCOM did not complete and that has taken some years, and issues of transformers here in KZN. That issue was raised yesterday, and the transformer is still not repaired. There are those aspects, and I think also training of maybe ESCOM's staff, because they're the face of ESCOM, and therefore they need to handle the members of the public with the respect and understanding their issues and be helpful as much as possible to the members of the public. Mr. Tole?
Thank you, Chair. I think you've partly covered me. I think what I wanted to emphasize is the issue that has been coming out of the public hearings. I think members of the public have been saying they would want ESCOM to interact with them as opposed to just asking them to use the tools that were indicated on slide 15. So I just thought I would want to request ESCOM to enhance that part, to come up with ways as to how they can meet the community as a whole, as opposed to requesting communities to raise their issues through the portals that were indicated on slide 15. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. As you will stand up now, maybe just to provide your last response to the issues. The issue of the flat rate, I see, and I would like some clarity there, so that it's not something that ESCOM says that it will depend on NERSA, approving. So it's a request, and it is a proposed solution from the members of the public that say they do want to pay, but they cannot afford. So are you rejecting that proposal? So it must just be clear that you are rejecting, if you are rejecting it because you stated there that it is something that is not in line with Section 15 of the Electricity Regulation Act. So there must not be confusion that it depends on whether NERSA is going to approve. NERSA will look into something that has been requested. If it's not requested by the licensee, NERSA cannot on its own without or make up an application for the licensee, but adjudicate on the application. So if you can clarify that issue of the flat rates. There's an issue that you did not respond to adequately. I know that you said you're going to come back to us, but it relates to the adjustment on sales forecast as indicated in the methodology. I think it's section 6.1 and 7.3 of the methodology, which requires ESCOM to provide the most recent figures. And remember that that is also linked to the production plan we spoke about, as well as the concerns raised with regards to the fact that the sales are declining. So, and you also spoke about, and also you provided the 3 lines, and there's that upward line of the demand forecast. So can you please do the rerun of the sales forecast, take into account what the methodology requires, as well as the production plan, so to adjust and submit to NERSA. You have not responded on the issue of the UCLF with regards to whether that could be adjusted downwards, taking into account the benchmarks and also the amount of, even if you can do it in writing, I'm trying to just flag it so that you give us your response on the issue of the UCLF. There's a benchmark of 13%, and would like ESCOM to take that into consideration as you commit to improve efficiencies in the operation of the plants. The other issue that we mentioned yesterday, which you did not touch today, you are going to come back today, is the issue of the RAB insofar as the Deloitte report is concerned. If you can also just provide that information to us. And that is all from my side. I just needed to make sure that I mentioned those. Thank you very much. Mr. Bukula has one more question from the members of the public. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Bukula.
Thank you, Chairperson. The question is to please provide clarity on how the FBE of 50 kilowatt hours increased can be made to 150 kilowatt hours. The second question is, how did you get savings on the OCGTs when 4,100 megawatts is available, and what is the load factor? I suppose that's the load factor of the OCGTs. The other question is, or comment is that ESCOM has failed to justify their increase. They're talking about balancing the financial statement, no clear indication on how they will deal with corruption. And there's also a need to clarify on how the indigent will be identified. For now, it is left to the municipalities to determine the criteria. And different municipalities have different criteria to determine the indigent. Can we have one criteria for all South Africans? This one, prior to the 1996 generation, was 35,000 megawatts with only 15 major plants, was now we have 31,000 megawatts despite the 4 additional plants. Yet the tariff increases 2007 to 2024 the tariff increased by 937%, whilst the inflation was 155%. ESCOM's average annual tariff was 22%, and the 937% largely due to Medupi, Kusile, cost overruns, theft and corruption. Initial estimate cost of 80 billion rand in 2011, but in 2019 the final costs were 234 billion rand. So how are consumers being called to pay for these errors? Was their losses not being recovered from those responsible? Those are all of the questions, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Over to you, ESCOM.
Thank you, Chairperson and panelists. So, Ms. Semani, the comments around customer service, we take note of that. And as the chair has also added, it's not about only putting the information up, let's do the different languages, but it's the interface with the customers. And then also, we've also got the colleagues from KZN here to ensure that the different mechanisms and channels are working, so we take that on board. Chair, I think your other important point linked to customer service, it's just not only the call center and the digital interfaces, it's the technicians that are meeting face to face with the customers, and we must treat them with respect. We do take that message on board, and I will pass it back to the CE and to the head of distribution as well. Then with regard to KZN and the transformers and what has not been resolved, we do have the General Manager, Kevin Pillay for KZN. We'll pass that query on to him to follow up with regard to that. I think you explained the importance of dealing with the training around that face-to-face interface with the customers, especially from the technical people. I think that's linked to Advocate Sitoli's question around enhancing as well as engaging much more proactively with community forums to find solutions around customer services and the challenges for ESCOM, as well as taking those learnings and engaging with municipalities. Chair, what we're saying with the flat rate, at this point in time, you can't have a flat rate with an unlimited consumption. I think as part of the proposals of the retail tariff plan, we said bring it down to a single block. So yes, the manner in which it was proposed by the community, ESCOM cannot support that. We need to look at a mechanism of how do you get somewhere in between what was proposed and what is currently available and what ESCOM is proposing, and we will engage with yourselves as well, and we need to engage with the community forums. But it just can't be open-ended consumption as Daphne was explaining. Chair, with regard to the sales forecast, that does, we'll take that on board as we rerun this production plan, and in that we'll also do the write-up around the UCLF as you've highlighted, Chairperson. With regard to the RAB, we will give that in writing as part of our feedback. The 150 kilowatt hours, and as we're proposing, we said obviously this has to be funded at a government level. Engagements need to be had with National Treasury on how the proposal will be funded. It cannot be funded by ESCOM. With regard to OCGTs, if I understood the question correctly, and load factors, we've demonstrated and explained as ESCOM that yes, in the application we have a 6% load factor, down from where we were operating. The challenge to us by the regulators being looked to also reduce that. We also come back in writing on that. But I did also explain in a previous public hearing, there was a proposal or recommendation from one of the members of the public, 1% load factor, which we do not support. We believe that means you only have this plant available for 15 minutes of the day. The intention of OCGTs, as Eric was trying to explain, is to help you on an optimal basis, as the intention of these technologies is to navigate those peaks. In terms of corruption, Chair, we're working on that. We've shown you the cases, but these things do take time, working with law enforcement agencies through the security cluster as well as the SIU. We have committed as ESCOM, as and when we do recover money, we will then pass that onto the consumer. In terms of the megawatts, if I understood it correctly, 36,000 megawatts, I think 1996, and 41,000. Wasn't too clear on that question, but if I link it to The price of electricity between 2007 to now grew by about 937%, average increases of 22%, while inflation as a principle is much lower. I think we've explained there are many other factors than inflation that makes up contributes to the production of electricity, but also it's not just about what happened with the sales number. The infrastructure in Eskom has grown, the customers, the networks on transmission side, as well as distribution side, and the megawatts. Also, the changing environment and the landscape in terms of the industry, bringing in IPPs and dealing with those dynamics also required costs to be incurred as well. With regard to, Chair, the 8 billion to I think some 254 billion losses to Mr. Bakula, I didn't hear the question correctly. If I'm assuming it relates to irregular expenditure, I explained.
May I repeat it for you, Mr. Kasim? It says that the increases of 937% in the tariff were due largely to the Medupi and Kusile cost overruns, theft and corruption. And then the part really says that with Medupi and Kusile, the initial costs were 80 billion rand, but by 2019, the costs were 234 billion rand. So how can customers be called on to pay for all of these errors whilst the losses were not recovered from those who were responsible?
Yeah, no, thanks for that clarity, Mr. Bakula. I think as I explained in terms of the RAB and its links to the RAB valuation report, that RAB valuation is done on benchmarks, the benchmarks of those technologies. That was submitted, and I think in one of our slides through the public hearings, totally contributing to that annual revenue, the sum of Medupi and Kusiles, the return and the depreciation is in the region of 20 billion out of the applied allowable revenue. So if you work it out as a percentage, it's contributing about 5% to the total allowable revenue being requested. But the key point here in doing the RAB valuation is based on a benchmark which the report indicates, not the actual costs incurred. And we will then clarify that also in writing with the regulator. Thanks.
Mr. Kazim, can you just deal with the issue of the indigent, the fact that it is an exercise done by the municipalities rather than being done by a central division that does it for the whole country? Because the question or the issue raised was that different municipalities have different criteria.
Yes. No, thanks, Mr. Bakula. I think on that and the different criteria, I think to get the benefit and the consistency, this needs to be led by government, where you have that single criteria that is applied across the country and in all the provinces. And we'll take that message back to our shareholder as well. Thank you.
Thank you. The chairperson has stepped out and unfortunately have to take over, but I think it would be unfair of me to close the hearing without him. But for now, I'd like to thank you for your inputs. Thank you for the additional information that you are still going to provide us. And thank you for responding to the questions in the best way that you could. I'd like to thank then the members of the public who are here for their contributions, their abilities to express what they needed Eskom to hear and understand from them, and most importantly, for also allowing us to have these proceedings going in the way that has been planned. And fortunately, before I say a lot of things, the chairperson is here, so she will continue from where I stopped. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pugula. I thought that I've handed over the reins to you, but thank you very much for stepping in for me. But I would like to thank everyone who has honored today's hearings, and we thank you for your time. We thank you for all the views that you have shared, and would like to assure you that we'll take all of that into consideration. Yes, it is going to be a very difficult task for the regulator, especially under these tight economic times, but we'll do our best, and ESCOM is also going to provide us with the necessary information that we have requested. And I would like to thank at this point all the interpretation services, people that assisted us, those that assisted us with the sign language. I'm sorry if you have already done so, Mr. Pugula, but also thank the host here for making everything possible for these public hearings, to thank the NERSA staff that has been providing the necessary support to the energy regulator members that are here managing these processes. It has been a tough time, very hectic, the traveling, and also listening to people that are touching on issues that some of us may not, have, the exposure that we're supposed to have to understand the plight of the people that might not even have the 10 rands to actually come to town, or even have access to charge their phones, or even having the phones. But I would like to thank the members of the energy regulator for your time. It is a weekend, it is a Saturday. We're committed to this process and want to make sure that this process will yield a decision that balances all the economic interest of the parties concerned as it is required in terms of our law. Thank you very much. Have a very good weekend. The meeting is now adjourned. Lunch, Mr. Mabunda, lunch is served. All right, lunch is served that side. If you can kindly help yourself there. Thank you.